Warning: this podcast may contain spoilers as well as coarse language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Our Anime Podcast. And today, I am your host, Feet Steel Taylor, and we're going to be talking about adaptations again. Re-adaptations? I don't know. Someone's going to think of the title. Anyway, I'm joined here with a couple of good friends like Shaking807.
Heyo.
Becker.
Heyo.
And Random Dude Man. I wanted to call you Randy. I'm sorry, man.
You know, you don't even fucking know my name, just like every other fucking person who listens to our podcast. Just kill yourself, honestly. God.
I feel like you specifically designed that name just so people wouldn't remember it, and then you'd be like, "Oh, I see, I told you, you guys can't remember it."
Well, am I wrong?
We actually can't remember it. Oh man, you just needed to write it down somewhere where we could remember it. And...
Oh, you don't mean to put a sticky note on the fridge?
Yeah.
Fucking like
right
when
next
you go
to
get your milk.
Awesome report card.
Oh, it's just a random dude, man.
Oh man, sometimes though, and how's this for a segue? Sometimes though, I wish when anime studios made adaptations for anime, they would have sticky notes of important plot details so they wouldn't leave certain things out. And again, I think it gets covered before you start this podcast that we're going to be talking about spoilers. I'll try to give you guys a heads up before we get too deep into them. But the first thing I want to talk about is what have been people's... I think it's easier to talk about with worse adaptations than to say what have been good adaptations. So what have been terrible adaptations in your mind? Shaw, how about you start us off?
Ooh, I'm in an interesting boat because I think I've pretty much only read source material things for shows that I have watched that have been good, and then I'm kind of curious, so I check out the adaptations. I guess one that I would think about that would be a bad adaptation would be, like, I was thinking of the show Gangster, because I checked out the manga a bit for that, and Gangster kind of was a bad adaptation kind of by default, because Manglobe kind of, like, blatantly went out of business at the end. So, like, by default, like, they were just, like, there wasn't, I know everyone hates, like, using this, but, like, the budget was gone, the animation quality dropped drastically over, like, 4 episodes, and it cut off the story, like, right in the middle of an arc. So, as, like, a one-cur, like, production, that did not do a good job of adapting the source material.
Yeah, I heard a lot about that, and I think, actually... maybe we can build off that a little bit. Does having an ending that's like, and so their journeys continued, or like, please go continue to read the source material, is that kind of an ending inherently a bad adaptation?
It depends. I think it's, like, there have been some shows that I think have, like, pulled it off because they wrap up a story arc, and it kind of feels like a natural ending where you just want to learn more. But then there have been some times where it's happened, and I've been like, you guys ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm not cool with that. I'm looking at you, No Game, No Life. That's mine. Like, you guys purposely dick me around as if there was a season 2, and then you just want me to read the light novel. That was not Gucci. You can't do that. But sometimes it feels like a good spot to end. So it really depends.
What do you think, Randy?
About what? No, I'm serious. Repeat the question, please.
Oh, my bad. So, like, so first of all, like, what's been a bad adaptation in your mind? And Shaw also brought up the fact that, like, you know, some of these anime have an ending that's like, and so their journeys continued, and, like, it's very blatantly an advertisement for the light novels. To you, is that a bad adaptation?
Okay, so let me go with the first one. Honestly, it's kind of hard for me to say that an adaptation's bad, because I don't really tend to try and compare it too much with the source, because I understand that there are challenges in adapting things, like you can't always include everything you want, and there might be certain scenes that you have to cut out, or certain areas that might not work as well in a different media format. But if I try and focus too much on that while I'm watching, I'm gonna have like a bad experience. Like I remember when I was watching again Origairu. Oh, there he goes mentioning it again. I focused a little too much on the comparison to the light novel, and that kind of soured my experience watching it, where I could have just watched it on its own. And I kind of like went forward with that. So I try heavily to avoid thinking about what the source is when I'm watching. I mean, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm disappointed that they didn't include this scene, but they usually do other scenes fairly well. So I don't think I can name one exactly where I was like, oh god, this is shit. Because there's never been a really shit experience. Like, maybe I'll usually drop it before it gets that bad. Have I dropped anything that I watched? Oh, Big Order, but then again, that was actual like that was actually
anime
faithful.
original, right? That was anime original.
No, there's a manga for it. That was faithful though, from what I read.
Yeah.
Arrow Manga Sensei, that I dropped, but that was more of a problem with the actual material than the adaptation quality. Masamune.
Masamune-kun?
Yeah.
No Revenge. Yeah.
But again, that's more of a quality issue with the manga where I couldn't really stand to watch it adapted, mostly because it was like 20 minutes of my time versus like 2 minutes to fly through the chapter if I hate it. So there's like differences. It ends up I can't really say that I dropped it because the adaptation was bad or I didn't like it because the adaptation was bad. It's mostly a problem with the source or something.
I think you bring up a really interesting point that I don't think many people do, where you said, like, you separate the adaptation from the source material, which is, I think, a really good attitude to have, but I don't think some people do that. So it's interesting to see how source material readers kind of cope with the adaptation, so to speak. Not like they're like dealing with like a death or something, but sometimes they act like it.
No, the problem is like a lot of them will start sharing up discussion threads with their source stuff, and it really sucks for the experience. Like, I've honestly just reading through the threads of like stuff I've read and then seeing what the source people say. It's just terrible. It's just like, why are you talking about this? Why do you like, I can understand things like, hey, they did this scene differently, but I'm not going to comment on how they, like, if it's better or worse. Like, I remember that happened for Showman Sample, which I watched a while back. Like, instead of doing the scene like this way, they did it a slightly different way, and I noticed that. So I showed people like a page for the manga, and I was like, this is one thing that they did.
For me, I would say, first of all, I agree with the discussion thread things. So I read the manga for Fuka by Koji Seo. Yeah, I mean, first of all, because I read a lot of Seo Koji when I was in middle school, high school. Like, I read Suzuka publishing and all of Kimi no Irumachi, A Town Where You Live, all of it publishing, which was, oh man, that was so many years of my life I will never get back. And so I also read Fuka. And I will say, first of all, it's not like the manga material is that good to begin with, but then the adaptation was just so much worse. But I will also say, so I try to avoid discussion threads. Nowadays, that's a discussion for a different time. But I will say, in the discussion threads for Fuka, it was so terrible because like everyone made like the joke that's been run into the ground over and over again, and then
I hear someone say truck coon one more time, I'm gonna go jump in front of a truck coon and like save myself. Like, we actually like had to like track people saying the word truck coon because it had been used so much last season.
Yes, and then it didn't even happen, and then people flipped out because it basically went anime original the last 4 episodes, and even as bad as Fuka is with its manga material, the anime original stuff was somehow even worse, which is surprising to say the least.
I want to say something about this because I was surprised. I mentioned like I said something about truck and like coming and sweeping and doing something because I did not know about the fact that I came from Fuka. I only remember it from like some random memes on like A and stuff. And I actually said that about something to one of my friends, and he was like, "Did you just spoil Fuka for me?" I was like, "Wait, what?"
Okay, first of all, if he didn't know that about Fuka already, he would not have known to associate that with Fuka.
Oh, it's just surprising seeing the meme like actually existing.
Come to life. Yeah, imagine reading that publishing. I dropped Fuka so hard after that. It was bad. But yeah, I'd say, for me, I think, Sha, you're right, where sometimes a cliffhanger can work really well. My go-to answer for that is with the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. At the very end, where like Kyona's like, "Oh, like we have more adventures to do, and that's for another time. But can you just allow me this little bit of time to celebrate the Christmas party?"
I think that's a good example because that doesn't even feel like a cliffhanger.
Right.
Yeah, because so much happened in that movie, right? Like, so much had already, like, an entire arc was animated into a movie. It's like, I'm okay. I can wait, for a non-existent season 3 or whatever,
And it was like a really good ending, and of course we're probably never going to get more animated material out of that because we haven't had a published book since like 2012, 2013, and like there's no reason to continue making animated material. But I'm very happy. Like I have read some of the Haruhi light novels. I'm very happy with that being the end of the Haruhi anime series.
Does it get better or worse, or?
Actually, I haven't read past Disappearance.
Oh.
So interesting. But another one that comes to mind is that I was kind of okay with, even though I have read the source material, is the end of where a certain scientific Railgun and a certain magical index end after their respective season 2s, especially with Railgun S ending on a super filler arc. Like to me, that was it was a pretty, I thought it was actually a really good adaptation of the source material for what anime is supposed to be. Like obviously, if you try to do a one-to-one adaptation, a lot of times it's just gonna fail. But I thought that was a good adaptation, though people obviously had their disagreements about that. Shaw, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I was thinking of, we'll probably talk about this more later when it comes to filler, which happens to be like a huge talking point for people, and of course Railgun gets brought up a lot in the filler discussions because I think there's obviously a lot of anger for source material fans because a lot of Railgun is made up of filler arcs, and like they know what other arcs exist and they want to see those adapted. But I think it's interesting because if you just watch Railgun, you don't know it's filler. So you just think it's kind of like the first season starts off as somewhat like of a chill but actiony slice of life series, and then it just ramps up in intensity, and then of course the sisters arc happens, and it kind of feels like a natural progression with a great tone change, but you're not really aware that it's filler. And I think for what we got to see, it was a good anime. I don't know if it counts as a good adaptation because it's adapting things that aren't in the manga, but like it's still a good product at the end of the day.
So before we continue this line of thought, which I think we should, how do we want to define filler? Is it simply anything that's non-canonical? Is it or is it, so like even with the case of Railgun, all those filler arcs were written by the original author of the Index series. So then is that no longer filler? Is it simply stuff that doesn't advance the plot, even if it does like stick to the source material? How do we want to define it? I personally like to use filler to describe anything that was like not in the original source material, but we'll open up the floor. Becker, how do you see it?
I was actually going to agree with you. I think it's stuff that's not in the source material, like say like filler arcs in say One Piece, which I was going to bring up is like what Shaw said, like it works really well considering like the structure of One Piece. Like in filler arcs in One Piece, they're usually just like 1 to 2 episodes. But like they'll just go to like some different island and they'll just like hang out there for an entire episode, because that's like kind of what One Piece is. They'll go from like one place to another to another to another, and it never feels like out of place. Whereas like something say like Bleach has like a big saga, and then we'll have this weird ass like, oh, we have to save this random ass princess in the middle of like a saga. It's like, oh okay, that's that's the thing, I guess. I don't know. Fuck.
Yeah, that would definitely, I would consider like both of those filler, but obviously they're,
one is better than the other. Like
exactly.
That's yeah.
How about you, Randy? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go. Oh, I'm sorry. So
Oh, fuck you. Go.
okay, so I was gonna say I think filler has become somewhat of a buzzword along the lines of like deconstruction and edgy, where people just kind of start like throwing it around to describe how they feel about something. So if someone doesn't like something, I think sometimes they're just like, oh yeah, that felt like filler. And it's like, no, that was in the original source material. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it filler. So I think I agree with you and Becker, where I was saying, like, filler to me is anime original content that was not found in the source material. That's my definition of filler, and I think it's kind of tough sometimes when, like, people just kind of use the word inaccurately, and then we get the feeling of, like, oh, well, I don't like this, so it's filler, which I feel like is pretty confusing and leads to interesting conversations.
Well, I'm going to have a dissenting opinion because I think filler exists in mangas and LNs as well. There's a lot.
You are not allowed to have a dissenting opinion.
LNs have a ton of freaking filler stuff. Like, it's so easy to do. Like, mangas, it's a little bit more difficult because you're already, like, drawing this, and you have viewers or readers who, like, see this stuff being, like, made instead of other arcs. With LNs, it's so easy. You literally just make a side story, and that's it. That's literally all it takes. You can make as many as you want. You can make side chapters.
You can make your whole series just filler by that logic.
So are you saying that, like, your definition...
No, because the point is filler, it doesn't contribute to the... Like, if a story has some goal in mind, right? And it sidetracks that in a sort of weird way, then you can still consider it filler. Again, Origairu has a ton of this in the first, like, half of the novels, because you have, like, random things being happening. You get into this monster of the week sort of trend, which was kind of annoying for, like, people who know what or knew what was coming up. I mean, again, this is talking about source readers, but even when I was reading it, it was kind of like, this is kind of weird. Why am I reading this story? And then you get to, like, when it actually gets to the story, and you realize that the stuff that happened before was, like, completely pointless. It was like, it was in shittier quality in comparison. It was put in to have these generic tropes in order to possibly sell more copies of the whatever media it is.
No, I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And as this is gonna sound weird, and, like, it's not something I'm proud to admit, but I love Sword Art Online. Kind of. I actually own, like, over a dozen of the light novels and manga. But I will say, Sword Art Online also does a lot of the filler stuff you were saying. Not so much to sell more copies, but it's always felt more like Reki has tried to buy himself more time. Like, the second light novel is basically just, like, side stories that happen in Aincrad. Like, the seventh one is just, like, all side stories that happen, like, throughout Aincrad. The eighth, like, he just has all these, like, side story light novels just to buy himself time, which I appreciated. And I think that's kind of what filler does. Like, the perfect filler... I'll rephrase. I think, like, net positive filler is something that, while not degrading the quality of the material, whether it's anime or manga or light novel, while not degrading that, it allows the author to work on, like, plotting and mapping out where they want to take the rest of the story, while still giving character development. Like with Railgun S, and with Railgun, the original first season, the filler actually gave us a lot of background on Uiharu and Saten that is not in the manga for Railgun. It does exist in some sense, to some extent in the index novels, but it definitely isn't there in the manga. If you're only going to read the manga, you wouldn't get that. So I liked the filler in that sense, how they developed that. I think it's the same in One Piece. I definitely do not believe that exists in Bleach. I think anytime you try and give a character something like an added, like, character trait or, like, added depth, it doesn't make sense in the storyline, and then they completely retcon it in the next arc anyway.
Yeah, I think that feels kind of unnatural if, like, the filler in between plot lines is just, like, inconsistent with the show. I think I do like Randy, I do like what you said about, like, filler can be not, like, can be aspects of the story that, like, don't really contribute to the main plot. And I think it's kind of interesting because I'll bring up my equivalent, Origaru. I found out that Hunter x Hunter actually has not, like, a lot of filler, but there's interesting aspects of it that are filler. Like, for example, in the first Hunter exam arc, there's like a good half episode that is completely dedicated to just Gon and Killua like goofing around, and it shows their personalities and their dynamics and their characters in a way that wasn't found in the manga, but it also doesn't take away from the main story. So I would say it's technically filler, but it really doesn't feel like filler. And in a similar sense, in Gintama, a lot of it is episodic adventures. So a lot of times you'll have random filler episodes, and you can't even tell the difference between a filler episode and canon content. So in that case, if it doesn't, it kind of begs the question, if it doesn't feel like filler, is it really filler?
How can our filler be real if our source isn't real? Randy, you go.
See, now the awkward thing is, you guys are like, how I feel like when you're talking about filler is that you're always putting in a negative tone. I might get annoyed at filler sometimes, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have. I agree. Can contribute in several different ways, but it's just the problem is when you're talking about it, you kind of have this feeling like, oh, it's filler, oh, it's filler, oh, it's there. There's like an idea around this where it's like, oh, if there's something that's filler, that means it's bad, like it's inherently bad, because a lot of people just assume that. A lot of casuals fucking assume that because they think, oh, I want to just see more action, more of the main story. I don't give a shit about developing other characters or seeing like more world building. I just want to see Eren punch the Titan. Like, fuck off.
Well, let's not piss off the casuals.
Actually, the casuals are probably not at fault for this because the casuals can't even tell where the elitists are like, yo, look at my 25%.
Actually, it diverges from the manga here.
That's perfect. No, yeah, I think that's right. And I think we have to recognize that filler inherently is not a bad thing. That's very true, Randy. Going off of that, I think one of the things I want to talk about now that we talked about how filler can be used positively is what have been your favorite adaptations of source material? How about we start you off with Becker?
Okay, so I don't know if you guys know, but my favorite anime is Ping Pong the Animation.
What?
Yeah, right? So I love the story of the show so much that I was like, I'm going to go read the manga because why not? And lo and behold, the story is exactly the same and done. Yeah. Well, aside from like
what else?
There's one anime original character in the entire show, and that's Kazuma's girlfriend. And I had no idea Kazuma's girlfriend is
Isn't that
original.
the cousin?
No.
Girlfriend.
It's the girl that he was with, but he never spent he never spent time with her because he was just too busy playing ping pong and wanting to get better.
That was his cousin who liked him. Oh well.
No, they weren't. He had a girlfriend, but he also him and the cousin were really chill.
Yeah.
He had another girlfriend? What the fuck?
It was she was really yeah.
Dude,
whoa.
Yeah. I can remember this.
What about that ending though? Sorry, Becca.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she worked like, I know we're going back to the old point, but like, she worked really perfectly because she was just there for Kazuma's characterization. She was just literally there for scenes with Kazuma. She wasn't there for anything else. It was perfect. And I read the manga, right? It's like, it's not panel for panel, like adapted, but like it's the same exact story. It's like Masaki Yuasa like really deeply understood this show. And since he like had like a love for this story, he like did a lot of the like production things himself. Like he did storyboards for every single episode. He was episode director for I think every single episode. He did that all by himself, and it like really showed in the show. It felt like one full like vision throughout the entire show. I don't know. Also it has amazing. I think it has amazing visuals. If you guys are curious, the art style is actually pretty similar in the manga as it is in the anime. So it's not just like he changed the art style in the anime kind of thing. But what I think makes the anime a little bit better than the manga is like the addition of audio, which you can't get from. Yeah, the soundtrack and the voice acting is really good. Mm-hmm. Super good. Some amazing performances in that show.
Oh, for sure.
And I think like that's what I like more. That's what makes me like watching like film and television a lot more than like reading, because I get that like extra like fact. I get that extra like, I don't know, oomph, I guess, to it. There's something like so much more enjoyable like about watching like a really good movie than like reading a really good book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I understand. It's just harder to find that really good movie.
Yeah, that's the thing. And when you do find it, it's like the best feeling ever.
Oh, for
And
sure.
That's the feeling I get with like watching the ping pong anime. I still love the manga. It's like currently my favorite manga on my Mal. But yeah, I think it's like it doesn't change really anything about the story because the story's already like pretty damn good. It just was like fully realized and like communicated excellently into a animation medium.
No, yeah, I completely get where you're coming from. Randy, did you have any thoughts? What's the best anime adaptation you've seen? Is it Oregairu?
Fate, how did you freaking know? Get out of my head.
Shit.
Just
Oh shit.
What
Honestly.
a surprise! I am shocked.
Okay, I think it's mostly because of the fact that I actually really knew the source material beforehand, so it helped helped me understand why it was a good adaptation. A lot of the first season cut the fat. Like there's actually like I know earlier I talked about filler in the light novel, but in the anime itself, there was actually very little filler. Like there was only enough scenes to help characterize everyone and introduce them, but it didn't continue to like keep those arcs in where they would like do something or do that monster of the week sort of deal, which was really nice. So I thought it was really well done. And they didn't. And what's really tricky as well about this is that whenever you have a character who heavily monologues, you have to choose what you keep in and what you exclude, and you can't have them explain all the actions too. A lot of light novels fall into this trap where you have characters explain the motivations or others, or just shout out, "I'm angry because of blah blah blah," and it's easy for the adaptation to say or to use one of those lines, right? To take advantage of those monologues or speeches or something to explain to viewers about things. But Orgaro did a lot better, where they picked and chose certain key monologues, right? Enough to get the idea, but they didn't saturate it with everything that he said. And they also didn't adapt the monologues completely word for word. I believe that some things were left out. The really famous genuine scene from Orgaro, it's slightly different in the light novel. So they do change things, and I thought it was like better because the monologue goes on for quite a while. And there's a lot of like accompanying effects to it. But they didn't keep all of that because they're on a time limit. They're trying to like get somewhere with the story, and so they cut it down, and it was I appreciate it for that. In addition to Orgairu, I actually want to mention Gate because I read the manga for Gate. Gate is drastically different from the manga, like insanely different. Yeah.
Okay.
You see
it
that
better or worse? Because like I'm gonna be
like
honest with you.
think of the difference between the Parasite manga and the Parasite anime.
That doesn't
I'm
mean
talking
much.
That's a very huge level of difference I'm talking about. I mean, it's not like they completely changed the technology and stuff everywhere, but the art style, how the character designs were, they update all of it, right? So it wasn't just copy paste the characters from the manga design, right? They actually
Do you mean like storyline was different, or just like the art style?
Storyline was still the same. I mean, like
okay, because I'm gonna be real with you. I hated the Gate anime.
That's fine. I mean, I'm just talking about the fact that it was a good adaptation.
Okay,
That's all.
Gotcha.
And they did interesting stuff with its direction. I guess the director did some interesting things because you normally have manga, or a lot of people strive to have like manga paneling, like match or try to just get the gist of all scenes done, and they don't really take advantage of the actual anime medium. They just kind of keep static panning shots or like static shots. But Gate actually tried to like shake things up a bit. You had like cross cuts. I think that's the right term for them. Maybe not. But they added a lot of like visual differences, like how they framed scenes differently. And I really appreciate that for an adaptation because it was showed that they were trying to actively like do something different instead of just, show the bare minimum that they needed in order to properly adapt it. So The other people will probably say that Gate actually was shit, and I will tell them that they are wrong and they can go, fuck off, because my opinion's better than theirs, because I'm an elitist, kind of, maybe, sort of.
I mean, do you love Legends of the Galactic Heroes?
I actually hate it. That's why I'm an elitist.
Oh, man. Yeah. I think you have a really good point with the monologues, though, especially because they're so prevalent in visual novels and light novels. Like, I think with Shiro, like, they took out almost all of his monologues, thank God, in Unlimited Blade Works. But in Haruhi, like, they kept almost all of Kyon's monologues, and I think that they did that well. But I also thought they did it well in Origairu. Like, I might not have liked the content of the I hate nice girl speech, but I actually really liked it in the terms of it revealing a lot about his character. And I thought it was a good job of, like, conveying it, and the voiceover as he's, like, watching over the crowd, and then as he watches Yui walk away. I thought that was a really well done scene. And I think that's one of the better ways I've seen of the typical light novel, visual novel monologuing you get, where it's all like tell, not show. And I think that was one of the better balances we've had with the monologues. And now, Shaw, let's get to you. What has been your favorite adaptation, and is it the choice of Steins Gate?
It is not the choice of Steins Gate.
What?
Because I wanted to switch it up, because at first I was going to talk about Haikyuu and how they like just really capitalize and like make it so much better. Not that the source is bad. I actually love the Haikyuu manga. It's really great, and it does have some like really good art when it comes down to it. But of course, they elevate it above and beyond for the anime. But since Becker already talked about his sports anime adaptation, I wanted to switch it up, and I'm going to talk about a show and source that I actually really hate, but I need to respect the adaptation for how much it capitalizes on the adaptation. And I'm choosing Kuzu no Honkai, otherwise known as Scum Squish. And this is an interesting one because so this came out last season, winter 2017, and the first episode came out, and I think it really hit the community by storm. Everyone was really impressed with the production values, the voice acting, the visuals, the way they frame the different manga panels in the scene. And I really loved the first episode. So I actually checked out the manga that night after I watched I watched the episode, and I'm like, okay, I want to read this. And I heard it was a pretty easy read, and I binged those 34 chapters in a night. And by the time I was done, I hated the shit out of it. It was it was one of those things where it's such a train wreck because I'm having so much fun, but I can't look away, but I hate it. And I think part of that hatred, besides the actual content of the story, comes from a lot of speaking of monologues, a lot of the monologues and the scenes got really repetitive. You kind of got to see the characters act in the same self-hurting way over and over again. And a lot of the scenes that were portrayed, when you see them happen so often, kind of gives off that feeling that they jumped the shark, and it gets a bit too melodramatic, it gets too over the top. And so then I would watch the anime weekly, and I really appreciated how much they cut back on that. They kind of they gave it more of a delicate tone. So I felt less emotionally enraged with the anime when I watched it. I wasn't as triggered. I wasn't I got to I remember getting to one panel in the manga, and I sent this to everyone. I have it saved on my computer as fuck this shit.
No, it's toxic AF.
It's toxic as fuck. And it's the most offensive manga panel I've ever seen. And then when that happened in the anime, I was not as offended, even though I knew it was coming, because the way they handled it, I think, felt more realistic. And I think it's for episode 7. It's kind of the climax of the story. It's kind of shit has hit the fan, and we're not getting a happy ending. That's pretty much what it confirms. And so when that happened, I was okay, this feels less over the top, so I feel it's better. It was a better quality episode and story that was told, and I think that shows that the adaptation was able to make it more of an interesting, compelling story than the manga was.
No, yeah, I first of all, I read some of Kuzuno Honkai after you told me so much about it, and I will 100% agree. I I actually enjoyed Kuzuno Honkai, the anime, but when I got to the manga, I just hated the characters so much more. It was actually kind of ridiculous, but I really appreciated. Like Randy, I think you made a really good distinction of sometimes anime just takes like the same cuts and they don't do too much, but Kuzuno Honkai did a really good job of imposing manga panels over and overlaying it on top of the backgrounds and scenery and things of that nature to give it kind of made you more into the minds of these characters. It was a little more personal. So I did like that, and I thought the presentation was really nice. But yeah, I will say the anime did a much better job of dialing back how much you might hate some of the characters, because, oh my goodness, they are very hateable.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, geez. I guess for me, it's hard because, oh man, favorite adaptation. I guess if I want to go with like things that were like very faithful to the original source material, oh man, like see, the easy answer, and I think this is the easiest sign to show that someone has not read Full Metal Alchemist's manga. Whenever someone says like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is like the closest we'll ever get to a one-to-one adaptation of a
Brotherhood
manga,
treatment.
it's so wrong. They actually left out so much of the characterization, especially when it comes to Kimberly, when it comes to Riza, when it comes to Greed and Ling. I thought those were underdeveloped in the anime. Of course, like, I think the anime is the best. It's my favorite. It's my number one. But I still think, like, in terms of that, like, it lacked in its one-to-one adaptations, even though it was really, really good. So, all that considering, I think actually the best example, even though it might not be, like, my favorite anime, the one where I saw that it was most faithful to its source while still being really good was Kuroko no Basket.
Interesting.
Because I think alongside with what Becker said, Kuroko no Basket was so much fun for me to read, and I read it, I caught up, and then I read it weekly for like the last 50, 60 chapters. It was so much fun. But with the anime, what I noticed is, at first, like, it felt kind of like a slog, and when you're reading something that's as fast-paced and so plot-driven as Kuroko, like, a lot of these manga aren't supposed to be, like, savored the way that you were implying, Becker, with, like, great movies and great books. They're supposed to just be, like, scarfed down and you're supposed to just binge them. But with Kuroko, like, the anime, you can't, because each episode is 24 minutes and you can't watch something in 24 minutes in less than 24 minutes, unless, like, you skip stuff, of course.
1.5 times speed height.
Do people actually do that? That's crazy.
I know, I could not do that. But with Kuroko, like, it did such a good job of, like, adhering to everything pretty much at the same pace that the manga did, especially, I thought, the flashback arc in the third season. It actually felt like it took a short amount of time in the anime than it did in the manga when it was publishing.
It's a great arc.
Oh, yeah, and I loved it. And the one thing I do really like about the Kuroko anime is that it forces you to slow down, which is weird, right? Because it's, like, all about being, like, super fast-paced and high-paced. It forces you to, like, slow down and, like, work on the characterization. Because that's something I think people might take for granted from Kuroko. Like, in Haikyuu, that's definitely one of the selling points. That's, like, one of the things you really focused on. Slam dunk, same thing. But with Kuroko, when you talk about it in, like, it's sports with Dragon Ball Z, like, you don't really focus on the characterization, but the flashback arc particularly did such a good job of developing Aomine. And the second season, the end of the first season did a good job of developing Kisei. And, like, all the Generation of Miracles got their time to shine, and, like, their backstory was fully fleshed. Not so much Murasaki Bara, but, like, everyone else had, like, a really solid foundation set. And, like, there's that one scene there's a panel in the manga in the flashback arc where, like, these two characters are by the riverbank as all emotional scenes happen. And one of them is just, like, starts to cry almost as it's raining, like, talking about how their friendship and their teamwork has deteriorated. In the manga, I was like, oh, that hurts. And then I just, like, flipped on to the next page. But in the anime, like, it builds up slowly. Like you see like the slow pitter patters of rain. You get see them like walk down slowly to the riverbank, and you know like things have been breaking apart between these two. And like honestly, it felt like a breakup scene. Like Shaw, am I wrong on this?
No, and I was going to add, because I haven't read the manga, but you bring up a great point with, at manga you kind of take them at your own pace, but with an anime adaptation, you're forced to watch that scene for however long they dictate. So they can really emphasize, look at how emotionally crushing this is to the characters. Like, look at how much time in this episode we're going to dedicate to this scene. You need to know, like, how important this is. And I think that really came across well in the scene you're talking about, as, like, look at how this relationship has deteriorated, this is how far they've come. And that just shows that they know their source material so well to know that, like, this is the money shot, we need to highlight this, we need to make the audience feel at this moment.
Yeah, that's something I want to say. Like, I feel like sports shonen benefit really well from getting like anime adaptations, because there's something like way more enjoyable than like for like watching like say a boxing fight from Ippo than like reading a boxing fight. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I would rather watch Makunouchi punch the shit out of someone than just like see panels of it. There's something like a lot more
impactful.
I don't know, like cool about it. Same thing with like Haikyuu, same thing with ping pong. Ping pong actually, I forgot to say this, does this really cool thing. Like it does like a panel style of like ping pong matches, but it like works for the show.
with the little like cutouts and it's great.
It's awesome. But yeah, there's like benefits. It's like something like very action or very movement oriented. It like would benefit really well from like a visual medium, I think. Or not a visual medium, but like a what's the term for like film and television? Film and television? Yeah.
Cinematic?
Cinematic, that's what it is, yeah. I don't know. That's just something I thought about when Shaw was talking about stuff.
No, I feel you. I was thinking that with like, especially in like Haikyuu, like when you talk about the free quick, you can read that something is fast, but when you see something that's fast...
You see it as fast, yeah.
You see it as fast. Like, you really get that impact. And, like, another scene from Haikyuu that happened in Season 3, like, in the manga, I read it, and I was like, yo, this is gonna be some fire shit when this gets adapted. And it's, like, when you see it come to life with, as you said before, with, like, the OST, the voice acting, the visuals, like, you really get the full impact. And it kind of feels like... the manga was, like, the building blocks, but then the anime is, like, the final form. Like, it's reached its final form.
I will completely agree. So I've only read the first 2 volumes of Haikyuu, because I didn't want to get too ahead, because I loved watching the anime so much. Not like Kuroko, where I read the manga so quickly. But it's one thing to hear, like, someone say, like, oh, like, Hinata can jump so high, or, like, he hung in the air for so long. But it's another thing when like you see it and they don't have to tell you that like he's like someone is like floating in midair, or like it seems like someone's flying. You get to see it. You kind of see more of the gravity and the pull of it. And I also love how they adjust the way things are shot. So like what things I really love about Haikyuu is like whenever someone goes for like a huge hit or like a huge play, like the art style around them changes.
Yeah, like you get those speed lines, right?
Yeah, the speed lines with like the heavy, dark, like paintbrush kind of lines. And I love that. And I love seeing that. And I think just like how fluid everything looks there is great. Like in season 2, I think there's one with like the wild dog, where like he's the only one in that art style where and then like he pushes people out of the way. And I really like that. And I think you're onto something there, Becker. And I wish it was this true of action shonen as well.
Well, sometimes if Bones is animated, at least it looks really nice.
Oh, for sure. Like what the fights in One Punch Man looked. I mean, Yusuke Murata is one of my favorite manga artists, and he did a fantastic job in the Shonen Jump adaptation of One Punch Man. But then to see it animated by Studio Bones was fantastic. Same with
Mob Psycho 100. Madhouse, though?
Oh, you're right.
Well, it was a bunch of people from Bones that were working at Madhouse. So it was like essentially Bones, but
it was,
I get what you're saying.
There was like pretty much no one from actually Studio Madhouse on the One Punch Man staff.
Other than Shingo Natsume, who was director,
Yes.
but
Yes. But like the animators and the people behind the fight scenes, which is why like I was relaying it to Bones. But yes, very good point, Becker, and something I should have noted.
that's all good, fam.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I liked about Hunter x Hunter too were the fights there. And I think it did a lot better job than Togashi did with his chicken scratch, especially. Like, I like Togashi as an author, and I think he's a really good writer, but his art can sometimes be a little
Questionable.
and a little lacking, but I think Madhouse did a fantastic job there, particularly, especially in the Chimera and Arc fights. So I think that's really good. But yeah, now what... Oh, Shaw, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, this is like kind of going off that. I think it's also, I found a recent example that is kind of the opposite, where there's been an adaptation that has kind of come under some criticism that you probably wouldn't be able to tell, because surprisingly enough, the most recent Gintama season is still in the top 10, despite being considered a lackluster adaptation. And it's interesting to see because, for, like, you guys who might not know, like, Gintama is made by Sunrise, but then they passed it down to one of their, like, sub-studios called Bandai Namco Pictures. So it's kind of like their baby studio, with a lot of new artists, have been taking on the more recent seasons for Gintama 2015 and 17. So recently in Gintama 2017, the one that just aired this past season, there was a really big fight scene that a lot of source material fans were looking forward to. And I'm pretty blind, so I couldn't really tell, but I think they did a decent job. But it really was supposed to be kind of that final boss fight that you get in, like, the Chimera Ant arc. Like, it's supposed to be that equivalent. It's supposed to be the season 3 of Haiku, like, one of those where, like, you really should have fluid animation.
Like the 720 shot.
You should have the 720 shot. You should really have, like, all of that. You should be all in on that. And it was a bit lackluster because it's really tough to adapt the gravitas of this fight into an anime. So you get a lot of kind of like cheap, like quick shots to kind of cover it up. And it's interesting because I think it's fine, but you can imagine like when source readers are saying, you know, like, no, it's like they kind of dropped the ball on that. And you know, if like Gintama fans are criticizing something, like they fucked up. You know, they don't do that. They do not do that. So it shows that, you know, adaptations are oftentimes can benefit a fight, but when a fight has like really specific choreography and is really trying to accomplish something that comes across well in the manga, if it doesn't really get that same treatment in the adaptation, it can be really lackluster and it's really noticeable.
Right. No, I definitely agree. And I think the opposite is true. Like in a bad anime, you could have a really good adapted fight. Like there's one between Kakashi, and spoiler name here, in the like last couple of arcs of Naruto, that is absolutely freaking amazing in the anime, and like is still pretty good in the manga, but was just like taken another step further. And I was not expecting it, especially in something that was just so bad and so full of filler. But yeah, and I think the next topic I wanted us to address is kind of has to do with filler. So like, not talking about like how well it adapted its source material, but overall your favorite anime that happened to be an adaptation, so it wasn't like an original source material. And I think I'll start off with mine. I kind of have two, I guess. The first is Cardcaptor Sakura, and I think that is for me the go-to example of how to take something that was really good in the manga form. The manga is a masterpiece in of its own, and not try to compete with it. I think, Randy, you hit it on the head earlier when, like you said, you try not to compare the two. And I think in the perfect world, you wouldn't. Like, you would take full advantage of what's available in each medium. And I think for me, Cardcaptor Sakura is one of the prime examples of that. The animation is gorgeous. It's considered the best of its generation, especially when it comes to the last great cell animated shows. It was one of those shows like in the 90s that had like, you know, with Sakura's like transformation scene and like her release scene for capturing cards. It was like quote unquote supposed to be reused animation, but because they changed the outfits every time and her poses, like, you knew they had to redraw it every time. And with manga, like, you can obviously just, like, skip it after a couple times, but in anime, like, it's such a big point of the show that you can't. So they took advantage of that and said, like, if we're gonna have her to go through the same ritual each time, we're gonna make it unique. Then what they also did is, like, in the manga, I want to say there's 20 cards, maybe that. But in the anime, there's 52 cards. There's a brand new character in Mei Ling, who wasn't there in the manga, who I think is brought to life and does a lot of good stuff in bringing out more things in Shaoran that we don't see in the manga, and in Sakura that we don't see in the manga, and I think even in Tomoya that we don't see in the manga. The soundtrack is amazing, the animation is amazing, and while the vast majority of it is filler, right? Because if you go from like 15 or so cards to 52, you're gonna have, what's my math, 37 filler episodes, but I think it did a fantastic job with that. And then the movie in itself was really good, even though it was completely different from the manga ending. And the other anime that I want to touch on briefly that I, always talk about is K-On!
I was gonna bring up Cam. God damn it.
Rip. Same.
I'm sorry, Vector. I love K-On! And, like, I read the entire manga for K-On! And I gotta say, like, I am so happy KyoAni did not adapt K-On! College and K-On! High School, because I hated K-On! College and K-On! High School. And a lot of
Aren't
things...
they already in high school? Oh, you mean like...
Well, is it like a different manga?
Oh, that's a different one. I know what you mean.
Yes. So for me, like, it was... So for K-On!, like, it was a good manga, but what made it so great and so iconic in its animation form was the music that we bring up, and how I think someone tracked it, like 98% of the second season was anime original, which is actually kind of ridiculous. And I really liked it, and I think Yamada Naoko and Yoshida Reiko, the screenwriter, did a good job of identifying what they loved about each character and what they wanted each character to be, like, in their own sense. Like, said, okay, you have your manga universe and we have our anime universe. They have, like, a lot of the same outlines, but we're going to fill them in completely differently, and we're going to treat them completely differently so we can get the best out of them in our medium.
Yeah, was it K-On! The K-On! Manga was originally 4 Koma, right?
Yeah, it is a 4-koma manga, and they got the rights to adapt it, like, the week after the first volume came out.
Wow, they must have saw, like... They must have saw, like, oh, wow, there's potential in this, we should do this. Well, I mean, then again, they not license, but they own a lot of the stuff they do adapt. Like, Phantom World, I know they have Chunibyo as well. That has a bunch of other anime original shit on there, but yeah, I was gonna say, like, a lot of 4 komas, like a lot of like adaptations of 4 koma are like usually have a lot of original stuff, because I mean, adapting a 4 koma is like, that's pretty that's a bit of a challenge in and of itself.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
Oh, just adapting 4 panels, that sounds ooh. But
ooh,
there's
what
things
else?
like I think Lucky Star is a 4 koma, if I remember correctly.
I believe so as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure that stuff has a ton. I know. Well, they still do like the 4 koma style comedy in the show, and it's like very prevalent in there. But like, there's I don't really remember, but I'm pretty sure that there's some anime original stuff in there as well. It's 26 episodes, like there'd have to be.
Yeah.
And since you said you go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, first of all, K-On! wasn't... I don't think KyoAni still owns the rights to K-On! It was... The producer was from TBS, who, like, sought it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just gonna briefly say, like, Gekkan Shoujo no Zaku-kun is a 4-koma manga, but I think, actually, Doga Koba did a really good job of, well, mostly sticking to the manga stuff turning into like an anime while still sticking to like its 4-koma comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But continue.
Now I remember. I was gonna bring up another 4-koma show that has like a lot of seasons in anime form, which is Hitomori's Sketch.
Oh,
which
right,
is
right.
so it's basically a four coma gag manga, right? But instead they keep a lot of the comedy in there. There's a few scenes that just feel like a straight up 4 coma like setup and everything, but like they turn into like this cute like kind of, it's almost like cute girls doing cute things, but it's like a slice of life about a bunch of girls just going to art school, and it's kind of like it's a like very slice of life heavy. It's very day to day. Actually, it's like it's told out of order because like there is no like quote unquote like date for any of these like chapters. It's just like, oh, here's a bunch of characters and it's Christmas time now, and it's like, oh, okay. I mean, obviously there's characters that have to graduate like in season 4. Spoilers, I guess. But I mean,
There's 4 seasons of Hinomori Sketch.
yeah. It's done by Shaft, so it's gonna look really interesting, but it started in like 2006, and I think the season 4 was 2011 or 2012. So yeah, they've been doing it for a long time. So yeah, what you were saying about K-On! Is like they understand like the characters of the show, and they just kind of build upon them, and they're like, oh, let's have them have character arcs, let's have them have friends and family members that you might not always see in the manga, but like they're there in the anime. They give the world of Hidamari Sketch a real feeling to it, you know? But yeah, it's a good show. Everyone should watch it. It's a great adaptation.
Nice. I will put it on my plan to watch, for all that means.
That means you're not watching it. We all know that.
So, in other words, it's like a backhanded compliment, honestly.
I will
love you,
plan to watch
I
it.
will put it on a list that I will not get to, and I will...
But it's on the list.
It's on the
For
list.
what it's worth.
Shaw, what's on your list of best anime that happened to be adapted? Adapted?
Adapted? Since we haven't really touched on it, I will do a quick thing on like visual novel adaptations, which I think are probably the hardest to do because they're like root based. I mean, you
And
can't
you
go.
love Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works.
I do. I mean, of course, like you got to take the adaptation in mind because they're so limited. You can't expect perfection because it's an adaptation. But sarcasm aside, so Steins Gate is my favorite, and I think it works really well because it is a visual novel and there are different routes to go down. But I think since it's a time travel story, that really helps it kind of like reset itself because there's a reset point. So you kind of get the feeling that like you've gotten all there is out of the adaptation, even if they kind of have to cut corners. Like they can't just do like 8-hour routes for every character. Like you need to cut it somewhere, but you still get that same feeling that you would as if you were playing it. So I think they do a good job with that. But I wanted to mention another adaptation that I think is like kind of low-key hysterical. So one of the first anime I actually watched is a Euro Butcher adaptation called Phantom Requiem of the Phantom, and it's like it's a show about like it's a Euro Butcher show about it's about like these assassins, like these kids who like become assassins, and it's like Euro Butcher shows up. It's like super depressing. Like there's some cool stuff, like some cool action, philosophical stuff, but it's really depressing. And people have like known the story for having like the ending looks like it's gonna be happy, and then they adapt the bad ending in the last like 30 seconds. And I think it's hysterical because I found this Yorubuchi quote saying, when someone asked like, why did you do the bad ending? And he said something along the lines of, the people who have played the visual novel have earned the right to have a good ending, but the anime viewers didn't. So they get the bad ending. And if you ever have to question, like, if Euro Butcher has a soul, you can look at that quote and figure it out for yourself. But I think that's hysterical.
Oh my gosh.
And that's, I think, questionable adaptation, but, maybe you didn't earn a good adaptation according to Euro Butcher. So that's all I have to say on that.
That's amazing. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, who knows what to say at that?
Who knows? I mean, I don't know. Randy, what do you have to say?
Well, obviously there's Origairu. That's my favorite.
Tell me more.
You know,
Wait,
maybe you
guys,
could just,
we should
you guys
have
just
we should have an Origairo podcast.
just fucking like right there on our channel. Just watch it now and hear me gush about the series and tell you how you're wrong in not liking it.
What if we just had Randy?
What if we do like it?
Well,
Can't tell us to
you're
fuck
wrong
off then.
there.
Get
You're wrong.
destroyed.
You didn't like it enough. You liked it for the wrong reasons. You didn't watch the show correctly.
You didn't
Gosh.
follow the right watch order. You were supposed to watch Index 2 in between season 1 and 2.
Oh my god.
First you start with Index 5 episodes 1 through 5.
Play the
So-
visual novel.
So another show that's an adaptation that I really enjoyed was Welcome to the NHK. That was originally a novel, I don't think it was a light novel. I think it was just a regular novel, and it also has a manga. Surprisingly enough, the tones of each medium is very different from each other. While the general plot structure is similar, there are some scenes that, like the ending of the manga and the light novel, is different from the anime. The anime is more lighthearted, like it's more uplifting versus what happens in the manga and light novel. It's actually like I think a lot of people like saw I think their name's Masaki, something like that. Let me check. Yeah, Misaki. In a slightly more positive light, but the manga and light novel really focused in on her manipulative. Fuck, I can't speak. It's too late. Her cunning, like her evilness. She's a bad person, like actually really bad. More so than everyone else actually, and it's kind of surprising when you realize that. Of course, I didn't know that because I watched NHK first, and then I read the bits of the manga, and then I heard about the summaries of the novel, and it kind of changed my perception of the series a little bit. But the overall message was still very good, so I still kept it, like, you know, as a really favorite series of mine. Another series I think was adaptation that I think was really good was Gosek. I'm pretty sure Gosek originates from
A light novel.
a light novel. This was like, it's kind of hard to say because I personally just really enjoyed it. I know some people dropped it early on because they couldn't handle the main character constantly shouting Victoria.
Victory.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. Oh, fun fact, the main character in Gosek is the same guy who voices 8-Man from Origairu.
What a range.
Yeah, no, I'm not even joking. He has an amazing range. He voices Takio from Ore Monogatari.
Oh.
Like, legit, just
Damn.
completely different. Like, 3 different voices. It's insane.
I'm with you on Gosek, though. I like Gosek.
Yeah, Gosek was pretty good. I enjoyed, like...
Gothic.
I'm calling it Gosek.
Oh my gosh, not again.
You haven't even watched it.
I know. That's why I was so patient for so long.
The mysteries in it was neat. I liked it. It wasn't necessarily a slow pace, but it felt like it was a slow burn. But it felt like things was always happening, even if it just meant to deepen their relationship, which was nice. And I really enjoyed the ending. That was very nice.
The ending made me cry, actually. It was really beautiful.
Very warm and fuzzy feeling inside. I appreciate it for that. Mm-hmm. Like it was a complete adaptation, which was a really good part too.
Dang, we need more complete adaptations.
We do.
So
We need the Brotherhood treatment.
oh my gosh. Honestly, I could go for a whole podcast on like all the things that Brotherhood did not include in its anime adaptation that should have been there.
Brotherhood
Oh,
Pod, when?
But yeah, I think the last thing I want to talk about is we've talked about a lot of how we feel afterwards, but like when it's airing, do you prefer to have do you prefer to have read the source material beforehand? Do you enjoy reading it afterwards? Like, what is your best viewing experience? Or do you just like watching original anime where like everyone is at the same pace and no one knows what's going on? So Shaw, how about you start off? Because you're a mod of these discussion threads and you have to deal with all the shit.
Yo, like, Yeah, that's a thing. Like, spoiler Saturday is a fun time between Boku no Hero and Attack on Titan. That's a thing. And you won't guess what happens next. But I think it depends. I've watched shows while they were airing. Like I watched like JoJo Part 4 while it was airing, and then at some point I like gave up and read the source in like the middle, and then it was still fun watching those. It was fun watching those parts get adapted and come out as an anime, and it wasn't really that different. Same with like Haikyuu. Like I read the season 3 portion before it came out, so I knew when to anticipate it. But I don't think it really impacted my viewing experience that much, like in a positive way, because I didn't really notice. But I think it depends for discussion. Like if you're discussing it with people, I think it's really fun to speculate what's gonna happen. Like I had a lot of fun with the dumpster fire that was Mayoiga. That was so much fun because no one knew what would happen. And even on a show that I actually enjoyed, like Kiss Neighbor, it was fun to see the kind of theories that people would come up with. So I think it depends. I think it's a viewer to viewer thing. I think back to like what Randy said at the beginning. I like thinking of adaptations and their source materials really separately. I don't think an adaptation can save an anime, and I don't think an anime can save an adaptation because they really are separate. But as long as they both can tell like compelling stories with compelling characters, then it's fine in my book.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think even people who are like, I hate the people who are like, oh, like this adaptation is gonna ruin the original source material. I'm like, no, that's not a thing that happens.
Yeah, you can't retroactively destroy something.
Like, people have enjoyed FMA 2003, and people have hated FMA 2003, but that is not going to change what happened in the FMA manga. For me, I guess I used to read a lot more manga than I do now, and at times I really enjoyed it, like with Kuroko, but other times, like with Nisekoi, it was a real train wreck because I loved the Nisekoi manga, but the second season, Shaft adapted out of order and really disjointedly, and also didn't adapt the best arcs, even though they were like right after season 1. Like I made Shaw read so many Haru arcs because they're amazing, and they were not adapted, which made absolute no sense. Like,
but they adapted the arc with Chitogi's mom.
Chitogi's mom.
Yes.
They adapted Chitogi's mom, which was a good arc, but like even then, I felt like the manga was better for that.
Yeah, you're right.
But and then the Haru arcs were so good, and they really never saw the light of day, especially the beauty contest one. That I thought was one of Nisekoi's stronger arcs, and just like the despair I felt at knowing that it would never get adapted by Shaft, and if it did, it would be ruined.
Got shafted.
Hey, it did get shafted. It was also weird because like I read Shokugeki no Soma a long time ago before I knew it as Shokugeki no Soma, and then watching the anime I was like, this premise sounds really familiar. There can't be that many stories in Japan where like food makes clothes fly off of people. On the other hand, like when I haven't read the source material for something, it's like trying to, when you're scrolling down the page and you see like the layers and layers of black lines, and you're just like, okay, I can't cursor over this. I can't cursor over this. It's kind of insane. And to circumvent that, I have like kept up with Boku no Hero Academia because I hate Boku no Hero Academia, and I don't want anyone to tell me that it gets better later. And I just want to know ahead of time so no one can spoil me and say like, oh, it's so much better. Like that is my motivating reason for reading Boku no Hero Academia.
You don't have to guess what happens next.
I don't. And as far as original anime, like Comet Lucifer has really turned me off the idea of original anime, as well as Mayoiga, because they were just both so terrible. Like Rolling Girls I thought was really fun and really innovative and imaginative and fun, but I think it also suffered because of the weekly release it had. And of course, like I've talked about this before, I watched Code Geass R2 airing, and that was a thrill ride to the end with so much speculation, and that was so much fun. And I think if you can have, it depends on the group, right? If you have like a good group of people like even if it's an adapted work like Gakugurashi, the ending diverged. In fact, like from the start, it kind of diverged from the manga. So there were certain plot points that everyone knew were going to happen, even if you were a source reader. But there was enough differences where it was still entertaining and it was so much fun, even for those of us who hadn't read the source material at the time. Whereas you can have something like Attack on Titan or One Punch Man, where literally everyone is memeing about the same exact thing over and over again, and then it's no fun when Moomin Rider shows up. So I don't know. For me, I'd say on the whole, I would prefer it for shows that I have read the source material for. Is usually a little bit of a safer bet, because even if I've read it all the way through, it's usually because it's good. So even if it sucks in the anime, I'll be like, okay, I still have the manga to fall back on. How about you, Randy? Discussion threads or watching anime, which way do you prefer the most?
It's hard to say, because right now, like, a lot of what I see airing is stuff I know about, because I generally keep up with a lot of the more popular mangas. Not really light novels. Light novels to me are all trash, but
All of them.
All of
even
them.
Origaru.
Except Origaru.
Especially.
I generally know about all the mangas that end up getting adapted. Like, I'll read through a bit of it, maybe, if the premise sounds interesting. And if it gets adapted and the premise isn't interesting, I probably won't watch the anime anyways. For anything with light novels, generally I hear about it from A lot. And people just post summaries of it, what they think, and I kind of, read that, and it gives me a good idea of what to expect. And it helps me understand the premise as well. But I think that's about it. Usually, if it comes to discussion threads, I don't really I'm okay with visiting them. I don't like them for the really casual shows where you have a lot of it's a more casual manga. Real Life, for example, was not a big discussion thread I enjoyed reading, because almost everyone reads Real Life, and it's just like, oh god, wow, man, thanks for just telling me how great this show is. Boku no Hero Academia is another one, but then again, I have my own problems with it, so it's not just limited to the discussion thread. It's just kind of the overall feels weird. And Attack on Titan as well. Oh my god, fucking source readers, just fuck off. God, hate them, all of them.
Wow. What about Becker? Becker can read source material every once in a while.
I mean, I kind of do. I don't know. I tend to read manga that won't get an anime. Like Goodnight Poon Poon or something. I
Oyasumi Poon Poon,
seriously doubt
right.
that will ever get an anime, and I kind of hope it doesn't, because I don't think it would work as well as it does in the manga. But
Interesting. Yeah.
But I was gonna say I try not to go to discussion threads for adaptations, because like you guys have said, sources are literal cancer, and I'm just I don't want to read what sources have to say, because anything they have to say about an adaptation is usually just negative and toxic, and I don't really want to hear that shit. I want to go enjoy my anime, you bitch. God. But no, I don't know. Fuck source.
I think the best source are the sources you don't know were source.
Yeah, people that don't say anything. Just don't say anything ever. Just
if you have to announce that you've read the source for something, you should know you're not getting a medal. No one gives a shit. Yo, I guess what I read. No one cares.
Guys, I read a book. Cool. Dude, awesome.
You only get a medal for finishing an original anime that sucks, like Comet Lucifer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like original anime a lot. Some of my favorite shows ever are original, like Shampoo. Hey yo, hold up. Just a reminder, but I'm hosting a Shampoo rewatch coming up. Starts July 5th. On our anime, of course. If you're interested, join. If you're not interested, don't join. I don't fucking know. Have a fucking spicy day. Technolize, Fooly Cooly, shit like that. But I've come across really bad ones too, Code Geass R2, stuff like that.
I think that's
honestly, R2 was terrible because they focused so much on C2.
Yeah, right. We should focus on Colin. Jeez.
They should have focused more on Cotton.
I think it's
No.
cool with like originals because there's always that mystery aspect. Like you don't know what's gonna happen, and sometimes that's the fun of it.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I don't know. I will say also that sometimes I like treat myself to reading the first chapter of something that's really highly anticipated. Like I read the first chapter of Welcome to the Ballroom after like binging through. I've watched the preview so many times and I am so hyped for this summer. It's gonna be lit, fam.
Lit. I'm it's gonna be so embarrassing when I love a ballroom anime.
Oh, I'm excited for that ballroom show because it kind of looks like Haikyuu. Like it's the same character designer for the Haikyuu anime, so
And it's production IG.
it's gonna look pretty as fuck.
And it has Unison Square Garden as the OP.
And it has the character designer from Haiku, and it has the OST guy from Haiku, the composer.
What?
So,
Oh my gosh.
So this show is gonna be literally Haikyuu.
Oh my god.
literally,
It's gonna be
but it has girls, so it's gonna be more sex, and maybe, well, I don't know, I wouldn't call Haiku gay.
So it won't be as gay.
It won't be as gay. I was
Well-
gonna say it's not gay.
Everyone knows the amount of exclamation points you have on a show indicates how gay it is.
Like
so like
Keijo.
like
Yo, Keijo
Keijo.
was actually kind of gay. Like,
Yeah, like there's literally like no males in the show. It's actually like pretty gay.
the girl made another girl orgasm with like butt attacks, so that's pretty technically gay.
Like let's be honest, it's pretty gay.
I think that's the perfect way to end this podcast. So I don't know how many exclamation points are gonna put on this, but I want like at least 7 if you can make that happen. And for all hopefully more than 7 of you listening at home, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you listen to us next time. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on iTunes and YouTube and whatever other tubes we're on. I think we're not on like any colored tubes, are we?
No, that's racist.
That's
No, what the fuck?
are we on
No.
television?
It's also
Is that what you're
sexist.
asking? Like
Also homophobic and anti-Semitic.
I don't know what it is, but I'm offended, so that means I'm
Wow,
right.
I'm triggered by your
Yes.
offendedness. You don't have a right to be offended.
I feel like we should kill all sorts. Personally, that's.
I think we should kill all the 11s.
Whoa! Now it's a good time to end.
Now it's racist.
All right, see you guys later. This has been Fate Steel Taylor and the R Anime Podcast.